Hi class. Today we're going to look at P7-5B out of your textbook. So this is going to be a sample of that problem, which is very much like P7-5A in your textbook. So the instructions on P7-5B say that Cheetah Copy purchased a new copy machine. The new machine cost $140,000, including installation. The company estimates the equipment would have a residual value of $35,000. Cheetah Copy also estimates it will use the machine for 4 years or about 8,000 total hours. So the requirements for this assignment or this particular problem are to prepare a depreciation schedule for 4 years using 3 different methods. So we're going to start first with the straight line method. So the instructions say that our new machine has a cost of $140,000 and it has a residual value of $35,000. So to do the straight line method, we first have to figure out how much we're going to depreciate on this machine. So the depreciable cost under straight line is to take the cost, which is $140,000, less the residual value, which is $35,000. So that gives us a depreciable cost of $105,000. Now we only are going to depreciate this machine for $105,000 because if you think about it, we paid $140,000 for the machine and we're using some of that value of that machine over the course of 4 years. But at the end of the 4 years, that machine is not going to be worthless in this particular case. We think we're going to recover about $35,000 of that cost. So we're not going to depreciate the amount that we're not actually going to use, which is the $35,000. So we're only going to depreciate the amount or the value of the machine that we believe we're going to use up, which in this case is $105,000. So we're going to depreciate in straight line that same cost over the course of 4 years. So I'm just going to copy that down. So we're going to use the same depreciable cost each year for 4 years when using the straight line method. And that depreciation rate, when using the straight line method, is the same every year. Every year for 4 years, we're going to reduce the value of this machine by the same amount. So if you think about 100% will be depreciated over the course of 4 years. So in each year, we're going to have to depreciate 25%. So that's just a quarter of the value each year for 4 years. So you'll see here's a quarter in year 1, a quarter in year 2, a quarter in year 3, a quarter in year 4. So that should be 100% of the depreciable costs that we're going to depreciate over 4 years. If we were depreciating over 5 years, your depreciation rate would be 20%. You do 20% for 5 years, would be 100%. If it was 2 years, it would be 50% a year for 2 years. So I hope that makes sense. So then our depreciation expense, we're just going to multiply across, and this chart looks very much like your homework, so you're just going to go across. $105,000 times 25% is $26,250. So that's the amount of the expense that we're going to have for this year 1. Our accumulated depreciation is the accumulated amount of depreciation we take over each of the years, adding each year 1 year to the other. So in year 1, we had no previous depreciation expense on this equipment. Now we've taken $26,250 of depreciation, so our total depreciation up to this point is $26,250. And your book value is defined as your cost less your accumulated depreciation. So our cost was $140,000. Let me just write this out. $140,000. And that should be a comma. Less the accumulated depreciation that we have so far, which is $26,250. So if we do the math on that, we should come up with $113,750. And that's the amount that goes here. Let me just make a note. That's how I got that. All right, we're going to do exactly the same thing the next year, and it's straight line. which means that this amount of depreciation should be the same every year. So if you multiply that across, you'll still get $26,250. Now, when you come to the accumulated depreciation amount, you've got some accumulated depreciation that you've already taken, and then you have some additional depreciation for this year. So we're going to add those together. So in this case, it's $52,500. So we have just accumulated the total depreciation over the course of 2 years. Now your book value, you're going to calculate the same way. It's going to be $140,000 less our accumulated depreciation up to this point, which is $52,500, gives us a book value of $87,500. Oops, I left out a zero. So that goes here. Let me just make a note. That's where I got that from. All right, on to year 3. You're going to multiply across. You're going to get the same amount of depreciation. So again, our accumulated depreciation is going to be the balance in the previous year plus what we took this year. So $52,500 plus $26,250 gives us $78,750. And then our book value is going to be $140,000 less our accumulated depreciation of $78,750 up to this point, which gives us a book value of $61,250. Year 4, our depreciation is going to be the same amount. We're going to add this depreciation from this year up to what we've accumulated so far, so it's going to give us $105,000. And our book value is going to be $140,000, which is our cost, less our accumulated depreciation up to this point, gives us $35,000. And then I've got mine to auto total down here. So our total depreciation expense is $105,000. Now just a couple things to point out on straight line depreciation. Depreciation expense amounts are the same every year. At the end, your book value should equal your residual value. So if you remember, that's how much we think we're going to get out of this machine when we sell it. So that's the amount that we're not going to depreciate. So that should be our residual value that we're actually left with. Our total accumulated depreciation here should be equal to our depreciable cost, because this is the total amount we were expecting to depreciate. And so that amount should equal that. That amount also equals the amount of depreciation expense that we've taken over the course of those 4 years. So just some things to point out in that one. All right, so requirement 2 says to calculate using the double declining balance method. And in this case, we have a beginning book value, so our chart looks a little bit different than the first one. We have a beginning book value, a depreciation rate, and then the last part of the chart looks the same. So our beginning book value is the cost of the item, which is $140,000. So in this case, we're not actually considering the salvage value at this point. So we're going to start with our beginning book value, and then we're going to put in our depreciation rate. Our depreciation rate, because this is double declining balance, our life is 4 years. So let me just kind of put this over here. So our depreciation rate is double, so 2 times. We're going to take into consideration that we're going to spread it over 4 years. And that gives us a 0.5 depreciation rate per year. So if it was a triple declining balance method, it would be a 3 over the 4 years would be how you would calculate. If it was quadruple depreciation rate, it'd be 4 over 4. So that's just how I'm going to get this depreciation rate. So that actually goes here, and it's 0.5, and it's going to be 0.5 all the way down. All right, so we're going to calculate that out, our depreciation expense, And this, if you look here, we've got our times sign. So $140,000 times 50%, excuse me, is $70,000 in depreciation expense. So that's the amount of depreciation for the first year. Accumulated depreciation is the total depreciation we've taken up to this point. We had none from previous years because this is year one. We've taken the first year's depreciation, which is $70,000. So our accumulated depreciation is $70,000. Our book value is the beginning book value less the depreciation, accumulated depreciation up to this point, which is $70,000, gives us a balance or a book value of $70,000. So then I'm going to start in year two, and this one it gets a little bit tricky because we had a beginning book value of $140,000. We took some depreciation, so our ending book value at the end of year one is $70,000. So if it's the ending value at the end of year one, then it's the beginning value at the beginning of year two. So I'm just going to bring this book value down over here. I'm going to calculate across. 70,000 times 50% is $35,000. Our accumulated depreciation up to this point is $70,000 that we had previously, plus $35,000 gives us $105,000 in accumulated depreciation. Our book value at this point is the $140,000 cost less the accumulated depreciation of $105,000 gives us a book value of $35,000. All right. Now, if you notice, this book value is actually equal to the salvage value. And our depreciable cost, the amount we expected to depreciate in the instructions was $105,000, just like it was up here in requirement 1. So at this point, we've depreciated this piece of equipment all the way down to $35,000, which is the amount that we expected to depreciate it. And that's what we expect to get back. So we can stop right there because this asset is actually fully depreciated after 2 years. So you don't even have to calculate years 3 and 4. You're not going to take any additional depreciation off of this equipment because you've already taken the full amount of depreciation. So that's all there is to requirement 2. Requirement 3, we're going to do the activity-based method. And in the instructions, it says that we expect to use this piece of equipment for 4 years or 8,000 hours. And we need to know that 8,000 hours in order to do requirement 3, because we're going to depreciate this piece of equipment based on the activity, which in this case is hours. So let me go back to my instructions. The actual, in the instructions, it says actual use per year, and it gives us an amount for year 1, year 2, year 3, and year 4. So I'm going to go ahead and put those hours in. Hours used, 3,000 in year 1, 2,000 in year 2, 2,000 in year 3, and 2,000 in year 4. And you'll see I've got 2 different year 4s, so we'll get that in just a minute. So we need to figure out our depreciation rate. And in this case, we're going to actually do it as a dollar amount. So we're going to figure out how many hours do we think we're going to use this machine. In total, we believe it's going to be 8,000 hours. And our cost, our depreciable cost for this machine was 105,000 hours. So remember, we paid 140,000 for it. We expect to get back at the end of its life $35,000. So the calculation for activity-based method to figure out your depreciation rate is the depreciable cost, which is $105,000, divided by the number of activities used, which in this case is 8,000 hours total. So that gives us $13.125 of expense or amount or value of that expense that we expect to use for every hour that it is used. So our depreciation rate in this case is that amount, that activity amount is 3.125. and it's 3.125 all the way down. So we're just going to multiply across just like we have been doing. So 3,000 times 13.125 gives us a depreciation expense of $39,375. Accumulated depreciation works the same way. That's the total amount of depreciation we've taken to date. And in this case, it's only the amount for the first year since this is the first year, so $39,375. And then our book value is the cost, which is $140,000 minus the accumulated depreciation amount, which gives us $100,625. Let me just make some of my little notes here. So this depreciation rate came from there. And this is our book value less our accumulated depreciation. So we've got a book value of $100,625 at the end of year 1. At the end of year 2, we're going to calculate $2,000 or 2,000 hours times 13.125 gives us depreciation expense of $26,250. So we add the previous depreciation to the current depreciation. We're going to get accumulated depreciation of $65,625. Our book value is $140,000, which was the purchase price, less our accumulated depreciation, which is $65,625, gives us a book value of $74,375. Year 3, we're going to do exactly the same thing. So we're going to get $26,250 as the depreciation amount. We're going to add this amount to our previous accumulated depreciation, give us $91,875, which gives us a book value of $48,125. If we continue doing this, we say we're going to use this machine for 2,000 hours in year 4 times 13.125 gives us depreciation of $26,250. Gives us an accumulated depreciation of the previous amount plus the $26,250 gives us accumulated depreciation of $118,125, and then our book value would be $140,000 less our accumulated depreciation so far gives us a book value of $21,875. So I wanted to do this, and this is highlighted for a reason, because this is actually an incorrect amount, and the reason is that our book value is now $21,875, and that amount is below the amount of the salvage value. So we've actually depreciated into the salvage value, which we expect to get back. So we can't actually take this entire amount of depreciation because we're only going to depreciate down to the salvage value when using that activity-based method. So I'm going to do this again the right way. So still in year 4, we expect that we're going to use the machine 2,000 hours, and the amount, the activity depreciation rate is still 13.125%. So when we get to this bottom line, we're going to actually have to back into this because we want the book value to be the same as the salvage value, which is $35,000. So if we're only going to depreciate down to $35,000, we can only take $105,000 in accumulated depreciation. And that is actually the same as the accumulated depreciation we took up here and in the second one. So still we are only going to depreciate a total of $105,000. So if we back into this amount, we're going to do that by calculating the depreciation expense that we need to get down to the book value amount. So at this point, we had a book value of up here at the end of year 3, we had a book value of $48,125, and we need to get down to a book value of $35,000. So if we do that, we take the book value we had and the book value that we need to get down to and subtract those two, we come up with a difference of $13,125. Fix my typing here. All right, so that $13,125 is the amount of depreciation that we need to take in year 4 to make our ending book value be $35,000. So I'm going to put that in here. And let me just mark that that's where that came from. So this is actually the part you're going to do last. You're going to fill in the book value, the accumulated depreciation in year 4 first, and then you're going to back into the depreciation expense that you need. And when you add these together, not counting the highlighted one, but add the first 3 years and the correct year 4 together, you should come up with $105,000 in total depreciation expense, which is what we expected for this particular problem. And that is all there is to P7-5B.